to Maine, where President Biden has been pushing Bidenomics at a manufacturing facility and now is in the crowd, as you can see, pressed in the flesh. He's just about an hour outside of New Hampshire. This is Auburn, described by its mayor as a quintessential swing city that believes in bottom-up economics. NBC's Mike Memoli is there. Tell us a little bit about the speech and about this crowd.
Well, Chris, it really is so fitting that you're transitioning from a story about political investigations, legal investigations, into the former president with what the president was trying to achieve here today, because that really is one of the biggest divides right now in our politics. The Biden campaign really does believe that what matters to voters who will go to the polls in about 466 days, as I often say to you, Chris, not that anybody's counting, well, the issues like the economy will matter so much more than these controversies of the moment. And so President Biden came here to a more rural part of Maine, about an hour north of Portland, to talk about what's happening at a local level. A manufacturer here that's seen its business expand because, as Biden says, argues, the policies he's pursued in office. He signed an executive order that would try to link those who seek research and development funding from the government with a requirement to make those products, if they ultimately do invent a new one, here in this country. Now, the president trying to seize on some positive economic data and get credit for it. And he even made a reference to some of the controversy that the House Republicans may want to pursue, potentially even impeachment. Take a listen to part of the president's message here just in the last hour.
There's more work ahead. Earlier this week, the Washington Post suggested Republicans may have to find something else to criticize me for. Now that inflation is coming down, maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down. My dad used to say, at the end of the month, the question is, you just have a little, after you pay all your bills, you have just a little breathing room, a little left over. Folks, that's Bidenomics.
Now, Chris, another interesting part of this event is the geography. We are in Maine's 2nd congressional district. This is one of those states, as you know, where they actually award electoral votes by congressional district. And this is one that President Trump did pick up an electoral vote in 2020 and in 2016. It's also a district represented by a Democrat, Jared Golden, who is probably the Democrat who votes against his party most often in Congress. And I want to read part of the way he spoke ahead of the president, because it also speaks to another divide in our politics right now. Jared Golden saying that President Biden is a president who believes in the good character of, as he put it, normal American people, and there are more normal people than the weirdos would have us believe. So that really does speak to the way the Biden team views our politics right now, that it's that middle of the country. It's those quiet voters we don't necessarily hear. They're not the loudest voices in our politics, but those are the majority of the American people, and that's why the Biden team thinks they still have a fighting chance for the president to win his 2nd term next year.
Mike Memoli using the quote of the day. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.